we were hired to open for them for 2 months. And I think it was in 2006. The first show was in Pikeville, Kentucky. And we were in a van. We had one crew guy. It was just 4 of us then. It was before we got Brandon on keys. But we only had room enough for 5 people in the van, really, with suitcases. And I don't think we had a trailer yet. I think we put our gear we took out 2 seats and piled it all in the back. In fact, we called it the little cubby because there was on top of there was a drum box. It was the biggest case. There was a sleeping bag, and we took turns sleeping up there. Well, so we go to Pikeville, and we're just so excited, and we had like 30 minutes to play, and we moved our own gear, and we learned how to get out of the way, play your 30 minutes, and people liked us. Our music it was a pretty good fit. It wasn't too far removed from what ZZ Top was about to go do. Obviously, they're ZZ Top, but it wasn't like we were, Devo opening for ZZ Top. But Billy, I learned then, he's a venue dweller. So he comes to he doesn't hang out at the hotel, or he didn't then. He didn't hang out at the hotel all day like some people do. He comes to the venue, he eats catering, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and he hangs out. And he started hanging out with us, talking guitars. He came out and would watch every sound check we would do. He'd be standing there with a piece of pie or cake, getting crumbs in his beard, watching us. And if we played something he liked, he'd give us the fork of approval, And then one day he's like, "I'd like to play the drums." So somewhere we have a video of we're doing Willin' by Little Feat with Billy playing the drums. That night, though, back Pikeville, Kentucky, here we are. We're so excited, and we play our show, and their tour manager, Pablo, who we love dearly now, we just met him. He comes up and goes, "We have a problem." And we were like, Britt and I, our drummer, who's deceased now, we're like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, I need you to get all your guys together. And we were like, "Oh shit, we've blown it. What did we do? We got out of the way. We didn't go over." Young bands, don't ever go over. That's a big deal. Don't go over 30 seconds. Stop on time. Stop early if you can. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was, I think the day before that gig, they played the big Houston rodeo, which is their hometown, obviously. And they were given like solid gold and silver belt buckles. And they had just done the VH1 Rock Honors, and they all got rings. And there were some pretty expensive watches in their dressing rooms, I'm sure. Other things, that were valuable. Somebody robbed them. So we were fucking number one suspects because we were the newest additions to the tour. And we were like, "Oh no, like this couldn't be worse." We were told, "We saw you." We were in a dressing room, so of course we were in the hallway. But that was, "We saw you in the hallway on the closed caption, footage." And we were like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." So we called our manager, and he was like, "All I can say is empty your pockets. I mean, unload all your gear and prove to them that you strip down if you have to." And be like, we didn't steal anything." Because I think somebody stole a lot of that stuff. So it was really, Dusty Hill, I'll never forget, was standing over to the side and giving us this. He shook his head no. I was like, "Oh my God." And we're like, and they played. And after their show was over, the tour manager came back and said, "Rest easy. We found the guy." It was a local crew guy. They finally, they got him on the footage. I mean, I don't know maybe it wasn't digital footage. Maybe they were having to go through, with a fine tooth comb, hitting rewind a lot, but they were like, "We got him." And one of the local crew guys was like, "I know who that is." He was local crew, but he was a dirty, rotten scoundrel. Yeah, so the next day we were all just like, "Oh my God." And the next day, Dusty came over. He was out having a smoke. I was having a smoke, and he was like, he eased over to me, and he's like, I knew y'all didn't do that. And I thought, no, you didn't. But that was the beginning of our relationship with them, and I got to be pretty close with Billy, and it was all about guitars and blues, and I'd ask him questions about Houston, about Lightning Hopkins and Jimmy Reed, and just the stuff that he loved, And I remember I had just gotten a Lightning, it was the Aladdin record story, and that was still acoustic stuff. And I was like, I like this. I showed him, I got it. It was a double CD. Look at this, anthology. I was like, this is great. It doesn't have any of the electric stuff on it. He goes, that's the shit you want. You want the electric stuff. And I was like, I do? Oh. And you do. You want it all. But he talked about Lightning and Mance Lipscomb and just all these Texas people. Talk about the T-Birds, the early days of the Thunderbirds and Jimmy. And he hipped me to the Red Devils, a band from California. He was like, if you like the T-Birds, you'll love the Red Devils. The same kind of thing. Doing it real, And they had an album. He gave me he loved to burn CDs back then. He had his laptop out and he would burn. He made me his best of the XLO Records catalog, his favorite XLO sides. I still have it with, Lightning Slim and Slim Harpo and just tons of other great artists that I never would have. Well, I'd heard of them, but there were so many obscure things I never would have heard if he hadn't made me those CDs,
Did you ever play any of his guitars?
I did. Elwood, his tech, who is now the bass player, he was always very open with, come on over and check this out, I always wanted it to be Pearly Gates, but it wasn't because he doesn't tour with Pearly, not in a long time. But a crazy thing, we had a little break from the tour and we went and played the NAMM show. We played Orange Amplifier's 40th anniversary party with Mark Ford and Deacon Jones, B3 player that played with Freddie King. And I think John Lee Hooker too. Anyway, I was walking around the NAMM show there that year. I think that was 2007. And I saw the relaunched Dan Armstrong guitars hanging in a booth. And I talked to the guy in the booth and got some information. And I went back to the tour and I was having lunch with Billy. And I said, did you ever have a Dan Armstrong? And he went, I did. And I said, did you like it? He said, I loved it. And those were circa 1969, 1970 Ampeg guitars, And I always wanted one because Keith had one and Joe Perry had one and Rick Richards and Ron Wood and even Tom Kiefer. All these guys that, played that guitar. I said, well, they're making them again. And he said, they are. I said, yeah, I saw some at the NAMM show. And he said, we got to get us one. And I thought, yeah, that'd be great, 2 days later, Pablo comes by. I'm walking through the dressing room hallway or something, and he says, hey, come in here. Billy wants to talk to you. And I went in, and there were 2 boxes. I saw them when I walked in. And I tried not to make it obvious that I just kind of side-eyed him, and he's like, come sit down. And I did, and we talked for like 30 minutes. But all I could think about were those boxes over by the door. And finally, he was like, all right, well, I'll see you later. And I thought, oh. And I got up to walk out, and he goes, hey, wait a minute. Grab one of those boxes there. And I did and pulled it out. And we sat down and swapped it back and forth. And then
Was he just toying with you?
He gave it to me.
I mean, like when that whole...
Yes, he would. He had, because the way that they were, which maybe he wasn't, I don't know. But he's a very giving person, He would do, that was a really grand gesture and a very generous thing to do. I still have it. I love that guitar dearly. I quit touring with it a while back. Just, it's special, But even otherwise, every day he would give us something. Little robots or bow ties that spin or something. It was always some little trinket. One day was chocolate-covered grasshoppers. Have you had these? Now you have. Here you go. He is maybe the most unique person I've ever met in the most beautiful way.
He seems to understand the space that he occupies in our minds and in our emotions of history and all of that.
I think he does. I think you're exactly right. What a great way to put it. Yeah. He also would give advice, because he's always been a little different and you might say off kilter compared to his contemporaries. He had a different slant on things. Like even that first record on the back when it's called Abstract Blues. You know what I mean? Like, of course it is, because it's not commonplace. It's different. They had their own spin on what they were doing, and then they, they went from like ragged jeans and like plaid shirts to nudie suits on Fandango, and that confused me because when I was a kid, that's the first thing I saw, and I thought nudie suits equals country band. That was my way of thinking. And then you get it and put it on, and I'm like, no, it's not a country band. And but he told me one day, he was like, you know what you guys need to do? You need to change your image a little bit. And I was like, really? And he goes, yeah. I mean, you got a thing, but it's kind of been done, And I was like, I mean, I guess everything has. As he's telling me this, I'm thinking, well, he created something that hadn't been really done, with the beards and with the way that as they moved into the early 80s. And he said, are you familiar with Doug Somm? I said, I am. He goes, Sir Douglas Quintet? I said, yeah. He goes, that's what you need to do. He goes, they confused people when they came out. People thought they were British because they wore black suits and little black ties and Cuban heels. That's what you need to do. I couldn't talk the rest of the band into it. I thought it was a great idea. But he's always thinking. His wheels are always turning. I mean, I remember the first one that I picked up, Elwood was like, don't hurt yourself. Those are extremely small, 7s or 8s, but really slinky. How amazing is it that it doesn't sound like that when he plays it? And somebody told me, we've never spoken of it, the two of us, but somebody told me that B.B. King told him, he picked up a guitar of his and said, why are you working so hard? And since then, Brian Henneman. Brian is...
I love Brian.
A great friend, and he is an encyclopedia of guitar knowledge, and not just, hey, this is a 1952 Telecaster. He knows the gauges of strings that people played. So he talks about James Burton's wacky gauge choices and Albert King, who are probably the weirdest of all, or Tony Iommi, which he's missing a couple of fingertips, so he can play what he wants to, but it all makes such a difference in the way those instruments sound, and therefore the way those dudes play. With Billy, I'm like, even now, it's like you sound like the same dude that was playing Waiting for the Bus. How is it that he went from 10s or 11s to 8s and you can't tell? I don't know. He did tell me once, he's like, you know what I love about this? And I said, what? And he said, I go out there every night and I'll try anything on the guitar. We're talking about guitar, playing the guitar. He goes, y'all need to quit rehearsing so much. And we didn't. We would just sound check every day, and maybe I guess we were running through stuff or whatever. And he goes, just let it go, man. Just go for it. Sometimes you land it, sometimes you don't. And I thought, now that's easier for you to say because you sold all these tickets. But if we go out there in front of your fans and don't land it, that's all they're going to talk about. But I love him, man. What an original.